Okay, well, so I want to begin. Two things I'm going to do in a minute, or there's three pieces of what I'm going to do this evening. The first thing is I want to read a little bit, some excerpts from the letter from our General Minister and President. Her letter was sent out April 30th. You may have seen that because we sent it out to the email list, and you may have read that. I'm just going to pull out some pieces of that. Then I've got a short video I want to show you that the executive team has looked at. And then I want to go over some of the things that we're talking, some specific things related to us and our plans at this point. So those are the three things that I want to go through. Terri Hord Owens is our General Minister and President. And she writes, and I am going to just read parts of it. These are difficult decisions, but I want to encourage you, as difficult it is, not to rush too quickly back. It is not yet time to gather for worship in person. I know that it is heartbreaking not to be able to gather. We want nothing more than to hug our loved ones and squeeze the hands of our grieving friends. We want nothing more than to worship together and join our voices together in song. We want nothing more than to break bread together at our beloved communion tables. The economic impact of this pandemic is devastating, to be sure, and many of the decisions to reopen business are in response. There is and will be much work to do as we care for our hurting neighbors. Church, we don't make decisions based on economics. We make decisions based on love. And here in this time, in the midst of this pandemic, the loving thing to do is not to gather for worship. Love, as we know from 1 Corinthians 13, 4-5, is patient. Love does not insist on its own way. It is not easy to love from a distance. It's not easy to overcome our own desire for being physically close to our church family. It is not easy to give up the familiar in favor of this new way of being. It is likely we will never meet in quite the same way again. But we have a historic opportunity. We have the chance to test new ways, learn creatively, imagine beyond our old boundaries, and grow in understanding of the family of God. And then she goes on to, before she goes on and lists some resources, she reminds us that even though we're not meeting in the way that we've been meeting, that we are still church even when we meet like this, and even though we're not present with one. So I share that with you, so let's see if I can pull up this video for you to see. So the gist of this is that the world's changed, and church is not going to be exactly the same. We're going to have to implement new kinds of things, and we don't really exactly know what it's going to look like. But because we're a strong community, we can do this. And so, as you all probably know, Linn County has put in application to begin the process of reopening. I assume that you've all heard that. And assuming that that ends up being approved, there'll begin to be several phases that the governor has that the businesses and so forth go through. Executive team has done some talking, and it's our general sense that it was the realization that we need to move forward when we're ready, not necessarily on the timetable that's set before us. Okay? Not to say that we're going to get ahead of the governor's order, but that we should move forward when we're ready to move forward. And I'm going to put on your screen again, I'm going to put, and this is a draft. These are some of the things that we've been talking about as an executive team. These are some of the things that I basically tried to bring this together. The governor's plan has multiple phases. It's my sense that we need a phase before the phase. My bet, because we need to get ready. Some of the things that it seems that we need to get done beforehand is we need to really get this building deep cleaned. Carrie's been working on that, and that's been going on, but we need all of our carpets cleaned. And Elise is going to drop by pretty soon, and she's got a bid that we're going to ask for approval to get the carpets cleaned. Well, that timing was, okay, hold on. How do I find it? Okay. Anyway, so Elise is dropping in, and she's going to go over that. Some other things is, one of the things that we as we reflected upon this, that we thought about, was that even answering the door puts you within too close to another person, just walking to the door when somebody rings the doorbell. And one of the things we had talked about in the past from a security standpoint, but that that now becomes even more important just from a social distancing standpoint, is that what we really need on that door is a buzzer that Elite can release to let people in rather than having to stand there. We need to make sure we have adequate sanitation supplies once we move back into this first pre-open phase. Elise is working on it. It's very hard to get a lot of the things that we need, as you all know right now. So the assumption is that by the beginning of June, Linn County will be into phase one, which I believe is a minimum of 21 days that they'll be in phase one. I'm calling that pre-open phase, which is going to be roughly June, I'm thinking. This first period, the FCC staff will move back into the office spaces while we spend some time specifically looking at detailed traffic plans for just moving in and out of the building, for getting people where they need to be. Eric and I were, and I think it was Paul and Mary, were all in the narthex last week at one point. And every one of us was trying to keep our 6-foot distance from one another. But it was extremely difficult with 4 people. If we get a group of 25 people coming into worship, we're going to have some patterns in place so that people don't come too close to one another. Some of the other areas that bathrooms. I can't imagine how easy it is to run into somebody in that little easeway point. So anyway, so some of the general requirements that we're looking at is mask required unless alone in a room, entrance to the building through the alley door, and then exit another way. That we haven't quite determined. That bench that's right there near Elisa's office probably needs to move to allow people to have space apart. and I can get you copies of this. Any presence in the church, such as recording video for worship, really needs to be scheduled through the office so that we can schedule cleaning immediately afterwards, because we don't want somebody else coming into a room that's dirty and might be a place of contagion. During this first pre-open phase, we're thinking we're going to continue to worship the way that we are. We will open the offices on a flexible schedule. Social distancing of at least 6 feet at all times. Only 2 individuals in that outer office. Again, we've had a few times over the last months where we've discovered that if we get more than that in that space, you're right on top of each other. Elise, we're going to need to make sure that Elise is safe in terms of 6 feet distance if somebody comes in. So we're thinking 2 people in the outer office is probably the max that we can handle at one time to keep people safe. The doorbells are on the alley door, intercom and a camera system at the alley door, and Elise will go over that in a few minutes. During this first pre-open phase, thinking that we will discourage visits to the building unless it's absolutely essential. Encourage people to continue to telephone, text, or email. Even if you're able to get out and about in the community, we need to get ourselves ready for this. Other kinds of things that we need to be thinking about is demarcation of 6 feet. Oh, there's Elise. Okay. I didn't see it well. Okay. Demarcation of the 6 feet outside the office windows. Some social distancing areas may need to be marked if we need a waiting area. Masks. These are all based on CDC and other sources of information, the insurance board, and a variety of sources. If any sickness, even mild, we won't come in. Because we don't want to spread anything, but we can work from home. Cleaning practices, we need to make sure that the custodian cleans up the office space daily. Staff themselves will wipe up our own space before we leave on the day to make sure that there's not anything there. But when we start talking, as we begin later then to move into other parts of the building, it'll be really important that we know what needs to be cleaned and what doesn't. For this period of time, no in-person gatherings for the youth. They'll continue as they are. Same thing with adult education, same things with meetings. Community Meal is beginning to work at how they might do something going forward. They have a meeting scheduled on the 19th of May. They're putting together their own plan that meets the state guidelines. But what we're talking about is not something in the building, but distributing food outside in the parking lot. In a safe way. Pastoral care will continue as it's been. The restrooms we need to figure out, and then basically what we're envisioning is in this draft document is being kind of one step behind the state at each point, which means that if there's a problem, then it'll happen before we've caused troubles for ourselves. So that will be about that. And this is all, of course, as you all know, things are changing so rapidly. We don't know. We don't know yet what's going to happen. And so things will change as we go. As we begin to move into phase 2, which Oregon phase 2 and our phase 1, which I have not finished, we'll want to strategize those traffic patterns before we get there. We want to make sure that we have some extra masks in the building. So if somebody comes in and they're required to have one and they don't have it, we have one available for them. And there's just a variety of things here that we've jotted down in here. I envision that second phase is when we'll begin to worship back into the schedule, but we will probably want to cap that at 25 people, which means we will probably need to also run online simultaneously, and we may need to have multiple services that more or less duplicate one another. So that's the overview. Generally speaking, we just want to keep people safe. One of the questions in the letter that the regional ministers as a group sent out to all the churches and the pastors said was that one of the questions, they had a list of questions to ask yourselves, and one of the questions was, what would be the impact if you opened too quickly and somebody got it in your community, and how that would affect how, not just that person that gets sick, but how would it affect how you all relate in the long term? And that certainly spoke to me.